We said, or you said, I'm sorry, before we started up, only a lot of trade. It's a lot of movement today, but really only a few of them of note to really react to. But one of them, one of the ones that happened early this morning, Za'Darius Smith going to the Detroit Lions. We finally see the trade to replace Aidan Hutchinson. Aidan Hutchinson, it's crazy how good of a year he was having before the injury. 7.5 sacks through, I believe it was 5 games that he played. They showed a graphic, maybe it's like a week ago or so, of sack leaders, maybe 2 weeks. And he was still leading the league in like pressures or total sacks. I can't remember what it was. And he hadn't played for 2 straight weeks. I was going, geez, this guy, I mean, he's a difference maker. You really can't replace Aidan Hutchinson unless you get someone like a Myles Garrett, a TJ Watt, a Max Crosby. Like, he is the elite of the elite. But as far as trying to replace him goes, Za'Darius Smith was a pretty good option. And my concern about Za'Darius is that I remember him in 2022 with the Vikings. He had 10 sacks that year. He was so good to start the season. I mean, just a monster. But as the year went on and he put a little bit more mileage on that season, he started to taper off. And eventually, at the end of the year, it was kind of irrelevant. Like, he really didn't do much the second half of the season. Now, Detroit, it's better than anything Detroit has. Aleem McNeil has 2.5 sacks. He's leading the team outside of Hutchinson this season. So you need Za'Darius Smith. But I'm going to be curious how they use him over the rest of this year, because their goal is the Super Bowl, and it should be. But we've seen Za'Darius kind of tank towards the end of the seasons when he's used too much. So how they use him, I'm excited to see.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Aleem McNeil was the only guy they had before. And you saw that against the Packers. Aleem McNeil had 5 pressures from the inside, which was great. The rest of the defensive line had 5, which in a blowout victory with the Packers offense reeling, you want to see more than that. So yeah, the Lions offensive line, even though they've had some numbers, they've struggled to pressure. They've struggled to get to the quarterback. And they got the guy who was probably the best available edge rusher on the market. What I like from the Lions is while they're in a win now Super Bowl mode, they didn't go all in trying to get a guy like Azeez Ojulari, right? They didn't do, I think, they could in theory have done more. But
People
I think
wanted them to go for Crosby.
Yeah, they could have tried to make a move for Crosby or whatever, but I like that they didn't do that. They added a quality player at a good price. They recognize that this isn't like a 1-year window, and after this, the Lions are going to be terrible. They've got a lot of talent. They should continue to be good. So what you need to be looking for in that situation, what I think Brad Holmes did a really good job of, maybe didn't have the player everybody was hoping for. Maybe people wish they would have traded more and gotten a bigger name. But yet, a solid, productive player at a good price without taking on too much of a long-term commitment. So I really like this trade. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Lions. And Za'Darius Smith doesn't have to be a star for this trade to be good. He just needs to generate some pressure.
He needs to generate some pressure, and I think you bring in Za'Darius Smith too for the big game. You know, that's when you want him, because Za'Darius Smith at his best is still very, very good. And you're not going to get that during the whole season, but if the playoffs rolls around and he's somewhat fresh, he can be a difference maker. I mean, he still has that difference-making potential. This was a move for a Super Bowl team to make. It was a move that they had to make because the defense is still playing well. Brian Branch is a stud, but up front, you have to generate pressure. I mean, that is the trait of almost every Super Bowl team is they can get after the quarterback. It's one of the most important ones. And I think all Lions fans are happy about this trade today. They're only giving up a 5th this year and a 2026 7th. They're swapping 2026 7ths. So you're not giving up too much for a guy who potentially, I mean, we could be talking in January about Za'Darius Smith having a massive game to send the Lions to the NFC Conference Championship. That wouldn't surprise me at all. As far as Max Crosby and those guys go, I think, you know, our good friend Tom Monroe was talking about it, and he said he saw some hypothetical trades where it was like 3 first-round picks or 2 firsts and 2 seconds for Max Crosby, and the thought of Max Crosby lining up next to Aidan Hutchinson next year is nightmare fuel for anyone in the NFC North. But when you're talking about that much compensation, it gets to the point where it's a little ridiculous. The ask is ridiculous. And you're dealing with the Raiders, so anything's going to be ridiculous in that situation. I think overall Lions fans may have wanted someone a little bigger, maybe a little younger, who they could keep around longer. But Za'Darius Smith is I'm thinking about when the Bills, I know Vaughn was better than Za'Darius is right now. But when they went and got Von Miller a few years ago, you're hoping for that Von Miller moment. And he's been banged up, unfortunately, but that's what you're looking for with Za'Darius Smith. So I like it. I think overall it's a good trade for the Lions. And unfortunately, it's a good trade for the Lions. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to look too far ahead, but going into this offseason, the Lions have about $65 million in cap space, and there's more. So some of those names that got thrown out, one name I saw a whole bunch was Azeez Ojulari out of the Giants. He'll be a free agent next year, probably. I can't really see him getting franchise tags. So there's still plenty of opportunity to add talent into the future. You don't want to hemorrhage a bunch of draft picks in order to add Max Crosby, even though, as you say, he's one of the best players in the NFL. Just the smart, disciplined GMing that has taken this Lions team that's been a perennial loser and turned them into a team with one of the best rosters in the NFL. That's the kind of approach you want. And it's good that they didn't get infatuated with success and give up too much chasing after a dream.
Well, and you can argue, too, that Brad Holmes is the star of this team. As far as, Patrick Mahomes is there and Andy Reid are stars of the Chiefs. You have Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. As far as GMs being stars go, Brad Holmes is one of those guys, and he seemingly makes the right decision time and time again. Now, any Lions fan listening, the thought of matching up Max Crosby and Hutchinson and just in general adding a freak like Max Crosby is so alluring. I know I would have probably bit the bullet. And that's why I'm not.
I'm not sure that was even an option.
No, it probably wasn't. It probably wasn't. I'm just playing the hypothetical game here.
Yeah.
It's so fun to dream about those situations, but the smart move, the move that keeps you more competitive long term while maximizing your chances this year as well, was probably Za'Darius Smith. So I think they made the right decision. That's why I am not an NFL GM. And you would have a chance, but that's why Brad Holmes is.